I'm just back from a 7-night Sky Princess Scandinavian cruise where I challenged myself to test out 8 cruise tips I think cruisers massively underestimate, including one that I've seen totally wreck entire trips and almost created a massive problem for me, as you'll hear. Welcome aboard, I'm Gary Bembridge, and the first underrated tip is for any of you that post about your cruise adventures on social media, a lesson I learned the hard way the day I boarded this trip, despite having just been reminded about the perils. A week before boarding Sky Princess, I read about Tiffany Banks from Kentucky, USA, whose $15,000 presidential suite cruise on Carnival Celebration was cancelled 2 days before departure. She had excitedly been posting on social media about her cruise, but inadvisably ignored the underrated tip about never showing any booking documentation. Someone spitefully had zoomed into that, noted down the booking reference, and used it to log into the booking and cancelled the trip. Tiffany lost her entire $15,000 because Carnival would not accept any liability because the cruise was cancelled with the correct and relevant booking number, and due to the timing meant 100% of the fare was forfeited under the terms and conditions. I too did not fully follow this underrated tip about not posting personal information, and it caused me a big problem. The day I boarded Sky Princess, I posted a YouTube video where I showed a demo of how to use an eSIM on a mobile phone when you're on a cruise. Now, having been reminded by Tiffany's experience of the risk of sharing personal information, I had blanked out my personal mobile phone number. Well, I thought I had, because I'd not realized that in the transition to one of the shots, the blurring lifted slightly, just enough to reveal my number. Luckily, minutes after posting, a loyal follower spotted it and messaged me using my number that he'd seen to prove the point, and I was able though to go in and quickly blur it out. However, due to the risk that less well-meaning people had actually seen my number, I decided I needed to change my number, which has been, I tell you, a real hassle. If you ever post about your cruise, a flight, a hotel, or any travel plans, an underrated tip is to never include any documentation, tickets, anything with personal information on, even if you think or trying to cover it up. It could slip through like mine did, and it could be used to ruin your trip. Now on to other underrated trips that are perhaps a bit more positive and should significantly improve your trip. The second of those that I put to the test successfully is not going to the buffet on embarkation day. So when I embarked Sky Princess in Southampton, it was packed, it was busy, and I knew the buffet was going to be frantic. So I looked and checked for alternatives. I saw that one of the main dining rooms was open. Instead of the packed buffet where it was hard to find a table, at a calm, tasty and leisurely lunch, making a great start to the cruise. I could also, by the way, have gone to Alfredo's Pizza restaurant, which is also less manic and frantic. Looking for an alternative dining venue to the buffet is an underrated tip in my view for embarkation day. Once underway on the cruise, I put another underrated trip to the test, also with really great success. On the Sky Princess cruise, we called into 3 ports I've been to before: Kristiansand, Oslo and Copenhagen. So I decided to use the underrated tip of staying on board during the last 2 because I'd been to both of them fairly recently. It meant I could have a leisurely breakfast in the main dining room, which was quiet because everyone else was rushing ashore to explore or to go on their tours. I took advantage of Port Day spa offers, which had up to 50% off. I went to the Quiet Fitness Center to work out. I didn't have to wait to use any of the equipment. I managed to get a lounger exactly where I wanted. I could swim in the pool alone. I could use the hot tubs without them being full. I could go to Alfredo's Pizza for lunch. It's normally heaving on sea days. It was very calm and great. I could also enjoy other facilities. I could speak to the future cruise team. They weren't rushing to get through waiting guests. And of course, I saved some money by not paying for the excursions. It was just great having the ship more to myself. Staying on board on pool days is very underrated, especially if on large ships with lots of facilities which are packed and hard to access on sea days. For me, another of the most underrated tips is being able to self-disembark at the end of the cruise by packing smart and taking a smaller suitcase. If you can carry all your own luggage, you can be the first to get off the ship on disembarkation day instead of waiting for your allocated time once your luggage has been taken off and put in the terminal. On large ships like Sky Princess, the disembarkation slots on my cruise stretched right the way through to 10:30 a.m., starting at 7:15 a.m. I was reminded how valuable this was on the cruise because I was able to get off the ship when disembarkation started. For self-disembarking, I got off at 7:30 a.m. I was in my car, parked at the cruise terminal, and I was home within 2 hours. However, if I had to wait for an allocated slot, it would have been so much later. I know some people on my cruise who had disembarkation slots got caught in the morning traffic. It took them ages to get up to London. Others were actually held on the ship way longer than planned because an issue developed getting luggage off the ship. It delayed some of those disembarkation slots towards the end by a further hour, which meant that some passengers were struggling or missed their flights. I found self-disembarking when doing fly cruises even better. So for example, my next cruise, which is on Sun Princess, I'm going to ensure and I'm going to pack to be able to do self-disembarking because it meant I could actually book an 11 a.m. flight home from Naples instead of having to wait till the next one, which was only in the evening. I try and pack the minimum. I use the guest laundry room, so ships like Sky Princess have one, so that's what I really plan to do. But whatever you do, another big underrated packing tip is if you're cruising with someone, split your clothes between cases if you're flying to join the cruise. So even if your case doesn't make your flight, you both will still have some clothes and bits and pieces. Another underrated packing tip, and one I did for this trip, as all of them, is to bring a personalized first aid kit. It costs a lot of money to go to the medical center. On Sky Princess, it was around $100, about £75 for a visit. But by bringing my own first aid kit often means avoiding any visit. In mine, I have treatments like for headaches, cuts, mouth ulcers, upset stomach, diarrhea, all that kind of stuff. By the way, did you know you cannot buy antidiarrheals like Imodium from the shops on board? You can only get them from the medical center because one of the symptoms of that, of course, is it's a symptom of norovirus or COVID. So if you need them and you have to go to the medical center, you're going to be assessed. You might even be required to quarantine. I created my first aid kit by always buying an extra of any item I buy across the year to treat any ailment that I have. So I kind of built up that kind of personalized kit. It also means not having to navigate pharmacies in ports where English isn't a first language if I am missing something. One of the more valuable items in my kit is a tooth repair kit. It's helped me, it's helped my partner, and it's helped other people that I've been traveling with when, a crown or filling comes loose. It ties you over until you can see a dentist in the next port or perhaps back home. Ships do not have dentists on board, and the medical center will and can only help with perhaps pain relief. Having watched many of the 3,600 passengers pouring off Sky Princess in the ports, wandering about aimlessly and having no idea of what the city's offered or what to do, reminded me of another key underrated tip. This is the importance of researching every port before boarding and knowing the best things to do, and importantly, how to do them, be that cruise excursions, independent ones, hop on a bus, or just walk into the sites. And once you're on board, go into the port talks if they have them, like they did on Sky Princess, which were given by an independent speaker. Also check if your cruise line offers port guides. Some lines like Princess had very good port guides on board and in the app. It's just so much better than just getting off the ship with no idea, relying on a local tourist authority who often, like in those ports that we called on, they did have a small stand, they had a couple of maps. My go-to site to sound out options before a cruise is what'sinport.com. They have a good overview, but I also search on YouTube for port overviews. I use that a lot, and you'll find some fantastic port overview videos on YouTube. Before the next underrated tip, which are about how I manage to cruise for less, like on the Sky Princess trip, a word about the sponsor of this particular video, the Wander Club. They have a great way to commemorate and remember all the landmarks, cities, and countries I visit. The Wander Club have fantastic collectible tokens for each of those. I can also even personalize them on the back with, for example, the dates I visited. I can also create personalized tokens like I did for my Sky Princess trip to commemorate it. The Wander Club also sells a range of token holders to add and collect my tokens to. Find out more and get up to 30% off by visiting thewanderclub.com/TFT and use the code TFT at checkout. Now for those 2 underrated cruise tips that can help you cruise for less. The first didn't work out for me on this particular Sky Princess cruise, but that is an underrated tip to cruise from regional or non-major ports because fares will usually be lower than the big cruise hub ports. This Sky Princess cruise departed from Southampton, the biggest and busiest port in the UK. But close to me from London are Tilbury, Portsmouth and Dover. Southampton is a really busy port, and the day we left, MSC Virtuosa, Celebrity Apex and P&O Iona, all massive ships, were also leaving. And so as well as fares being higher, staying the night before in Southampton was really expensive because the hotels were ran full and booked out, and traffic on the day made getting to the cruise terminal slow and very frustrating. But in regional ports, not only are the fares usually lower, pre or post stay hotels are cheaper, it's less busy, it's more hassle-free getting in and out of the port. In the USA, the good news is cruise lines are constantly adding new regional ports to sail from all around the country, and they're worth looking at versus the major Miami, Port Everglades and Port Canaveral ports, which are really busy and frantic. But this Sky Princess cruise did allow me to test out the other underrated cost-saving tip, and that is cruising in shoulder periods. This cruise took place in May, so that's many weeks after the April school holidays, where cruises were full and more costly because of those kind of Easter holidays. It was also before the school half-term holidays because demand and fares ramp up. And of course, this cruise was well before the peak summer holiday months of July and August. Shoulder periods are at the start and the end of any cruise season in a region. So for example, that's May and September in Alaska and the Mediterranean. It's sort of more out sort of November, March time in the Caribbean. These always usually mean the weather is pretty good, but fares are always lower than those peak periods. I have 8 overrated cruise tips I think you should stop doing over in this video, starting with the one that absolutely changed my cruise experience when I stopped doing it. See you over there.